Greetings everyone, this is Kyle Hyman from Board with Video Games, here with a game review for you on Play Some Video Games. The game I'm talking about this week is Monkey King Hero is Back, developed by Hexadrive in conjunction with Sony Interactive Entertainment, published by Oasis Games in China and other regions, but published by THQ Nordic in the West here. A couple things for you to note if you're listening to this review. Number one, we were provided with a copy of the game from THQ Nordic, so just be aware of that. Also be aware that if you are watching the video review, the gameplay that you're seeing and specifically the color palette is what happens when you revisit an area after you've completed the game. You revisit it in the form of a memory, so the color palette is more muted. So just be aware of that. The game itself actually is quite vibrant. The colors are very bright. The environments are quite bright in general, so this muted color palette you're seeing a little bit is just when you revisit areas. So with that out of the way, THQ Nordic says that Monkey King Hero is Back is, quote, like the movie, this action-adventure game tells the story of the young monk Lumiere meeting his hero son Wukong, but places the focus on the Monkey King himself while also introducing players to various stories and subplots not found in the movie. Together, Sun Wukong, Lumiere, and Pigsy embark on a journey of adventure while deepening the bonds of friendship between them. Players assume the role of Sun Wukong and use his mystical skills and abilities to defeat the assorted foes before them. The game immerses players in the middle of their own tale of adventure, while also enabling them to experience the rich and deep story the beloved movie is. And all of that, I would say, is mostly accurate. The one thing about this game is it kind of feels like it is stuck in time. And I don't necessarily know that's a bad thing. We haven't had a ton of games developed in China, published in the West yet, but a lot of what happens is that in this game are things that more modern games or more modern feeling games don't do more. There's a large amount of loading. Even sometimes you'll walk into a building, it will load to get into the building. You walk across the room, and then to get out on the other side, it loads again. So things like that happen. To pick up resources, you have to click your button for every single resource that you walk over that you want to pick up. The environments are very narrow and very linear. Realistically, most of the enemies you're going to encounter are almost all identical. There's about 4 or 5 types of enemies, and even the boss type enemies, for the most part, with about 2 exceptions, are very similar. So once you kind of get the idea of how to defeat all of these enemies, you can just rinse and repeat things over and over again. The combat feels slow, I would say, is the best way to describe it, because animations have to complete. There's no animation canceling, so all of your punches, all of your kicks, sweeps have to complete their animation. Sometimes there's a pause, and then you can input your next move. So when you're watching it, it almost looks clunky, and it doesn't feel clunky when you're playing it. You just have to get used to the pace of combat. Counters are very important in this game, but the wind-ups for some of the moves that you do are very long. So trying to space and get your counters to work well can be very challenging. The music in the game is good, but for how large and narrow, if that makes sense, these maps are, where you're traveling a long straight distance, the music loops are very short. You hear the same music numerous times in each environment. When you go from environment to environment, the music changes, but those loops happen very, very regularly. The environments end up kind of getting those sounds stuck in your head. The story overall is not bad. It's an interesting story too. It's a redemption tale, if you would. And there are some twists and turns, some unexpected moments that happen. I think actually the end is a very good end. I enjoyed how the game wrapped up. But overall, like I said, this feels like a game a bit stuck in. And I would not recommend it. I wouldn't say that it's a bad game, poor game. But it is a game that lays a foundation for what future games from China are going to expect it to surpass. It's very much like the entry level, that initial game that we were going to see, and hopefully future games build upon it. So nothing broken with the game. Nothing didn't work in the game. I finished it in about 7.5 hours. Overall, enjoyable. If you have seen the movie or you enjoy martial arts films, this might not be a bad pickup for you. But I would say overall, this is a game that has set a foundation that can likely be built off of positively moving forward. So I'm not certain I would recommend the game, but I also don't think it's a poorly made or a bad game in any way. It's just a game that's showing, here's what we can do. get excited about the future from, our studio and the other things that we might do. So overall, I had fun with it, but it definitely leaves a little bit to be desired as far as the depth of what we expect from games today, from the breadth of gameplay. Even like the upgrade trees are very, very basic and superficial. Like I said, overall, quality built, but leaves a bit to be desired. Thanks so much for listening to our review of Monkey King Hero is Back, and stay tuned to PSVG and play some video games.